Hey everybody, welcome to the Intrepid Museum's live virtual programming. I'm Eric Boehm, the Curator of Aviation, and thank you for joining me. I look forward to hearing your questions at the end of the program. You can actually pop some on there while I'm talking, and we'll see if we can address them. The museum's live streams are free, and if you would like to support us in delivering this content, please click the link below in the description and make a donation if you like. Lots of programming. You're getting me every other week. You get education programs much more often, and those folks are just doing a wonderful job. It's a whole lot of fun. Today, I want to talk about something I don't get to talk about a whole lot. There it is. And that's our McDonnell F3H Demon. And I don't think this airplane gets a whole lot of credit. Maybe it doesn't deserve a whole lot of credit. Let's talk about it a little bit. Get on the right page here. So the Demon was designed as a carrier-based, swept-wing, all-weather fighter equipped with cannons and air-to-air missiles. Now, you got to remember, this came down just after World War II. World War II was only over for a few years. In fact, it was 1949 when this airplane was ordered, prototype. First flight, as you're seeing this photograph right here, was in August of 1951. So look at the advanced shape of this jet compared to the combat airplanes from just 5, 6, 7 years previously. Quite an amazing leap in technology, yet there was a lot of growing pains. It was designed and built by the McDonnell Aircraft Corporation in St. Louis, Missouri. Getting it, 10 years after this picture was taken, those folks at McDonnell in St. Louis will be building Gemini capsules to put 2 men in space. So McDonnell seemed to know what they were doing. They had a great history with the Navy here in the 1950s, as we'll see. Douglas eventually merged, or McDonnell, I should say, eventually merged with Douglas Aircraft, and that conglomerate was eventually bought by Boeing. So all these great aircraft manufacturers all seem to be merging down to one or two major companies here in the United States. The Demon was primarily intended to counter the Russians' new swept-wing fighter, the MiG-15. If that sounds like a familiar story, because we were talking about the Skyray last week, exactly the same reason. The Navy was looking for that swept-wing fighter to go against the MiG-15, that jet that they encountered during the Korean War just a couple of years earlier. And it's just a marvelous-looking airplane. I think the Demon is just a beautiful thing, though didn't work out real well. So here we see another shot of one of the early prototypes here in the navy blue scheme. But this whole thing just didn't really work out real well. The early 1950s was a period of rapid design growth, experimentation in airframes and engines. We saw things like the Skyray, also the Cutlass, the F7U Cutlass. We don't have one in our collection, but it's something I'll probably talk about sometime in the future, the F7U Cutlass, another flying wing design. But also the jet engines. The jet engines were something new. They came out just before and during World War II, but they were really reaching their peak, and they were getting more and more power out of them. But look at the size of that thing. The Demons were first powered by this thing. This is a single Westinghouse J40 jet engine. The J40 never lived up to expectations. Its power was well below advertised, and its reliability was horrible. And to put a single engine in a Navy jet and have the reliability not be great was not great for the Navy. The Navy's flying over water from aircraft carriers, and if you only have that one engine and it's not reliable, your pilots are going swimming, and it was not an ideal situation. So, in fact, they were rolling the Demon off the assembly lines in the early 1950s, powered by this J40. The Navy just didn't like it. In fact, some of those Demons never actually reached the fleet. They went straight to aircraft maintenance schools, because it was still it's a real airplane, it's a real airframe, it's got a real jet engine in it, and they were used as trainers, ground trainers for mechanics. So I guess we got some of our dollars back out of them, but the airplane just had a dismal beginning. This also, we were talking about the Skyray last week. The prototype Skyray also tried to use this J40 engine, and it didn't work out, and they ended up switching to the J57, to make that airplane successful. But as for the Demon, this is a very large airplane, very heavy airplane. It was meant to carry a lot of missiles. It had 420 millimeter cannons. I'll talk about those in a minute. But it's a big, heavy airplane with that single engine, and it just needed a more reliable engine. The thing was redesigned to accept the more powerful and slightly more reliable Allison J71 jet engine. It's delayed its entry into service another 4 or 5 years. It wasn't until 1956 the airplane completely missed the Korean War, for which it was going to be designed for. But it did manage to get into service in 56. Initially, the aircraft had 4 internally mounted 20 millimeter cannons. If you look at this photograph and you see those dark patches kind of under the jet intake there below the cockpit, all the way down around almost the bottom of the belly where the landing gear doors are, you'll see there's some black. That's where the 4 20 millimeter cannons were located. Also, look at the wings. It was a swept wing, but look what's hanging below the wings, and it's not loaded right now, but you'll see weapons pylons, and you can carry either fuel tanks or missiles on those pylons. So the airplane was getting heavier as the Navy made more demands from it. The cannons up in the nose, those patches there, one of those patches, the one that's forward, kind of looks like an arrowhead, that's actually a block-off plate. The airplane's getting heavier, like I said. It's underpowered, even with the J-71. And the Navy just thought, you know what, we just don't need that many guns. And the thinking in the Navy was starting to evolve into air-to-air missiles and getting away from guns. And that's something we talked about when we talked about the FA Crusader, which was nicknamed at the time the last of the gunfighters, because they were getting away from guns and relying on air-to-air missiles. Air-to-air missiles were also a new technology that was going through a bit of a gestation period, where there was 2 types, both either radar-guided or heat-seeking types. And they took some of the cannons out. They took 1 out each. There was 4, 2 on each side. They took 1 out on each side and blocked off the whole exit port for the muzzle. Thus making it a little more streamlined, but definitely taking the weight out of the airplane. So here's a great aerial shot showing, once again, blanked off gun port up there, the top gun on that side of the airplane blocked off. But here carrying a couple of AIM-7 Sparrow air-to-air missiles. These are the radar-guided type missiles. And you'll see 4 of them on there. And it's a very early version of the Sparrow, which is still somewhat in service today, of a much, much more advanced design. This thing can also carry gas tanks, something the old jet engines were notoriously known for, was their lack of fuel efficiency. Especially when you kicked in afterburner to go real fast, you just drank gas really, really fast. So some of these pylons, this configuration with 4 missiles would have had extremely short range and probably wasn't seen much in service. More likely you would see these airplanes carrying drop tanks with extra fuel in them. And here's another great shot going off the angle deck of Intrepid after what I'm thinking it's probably not a bolter. His hook isn't down. It might have just been a touch and go, a practice landing, but he's going off the angle deck of Intrepid. This is a great shot. This particular squadron, VF-61, would actually trade in their Demons for Cougars, which is an airplane we did talk about a couple weeks ago. Okay, so they were never used in. Let me go back to that. They were never really actually used in combat. They missed the Korean War, but it was deployed during the Cold War years, especially on a couple of times when there was a need to deploy forces just to kind of show that force was in the area and that we were capable of reacting to world events. Won't get into those things because the Cold War is a very huge subject, and we'd just be here for many hours talking about that. But they did serve that purpose. They were deployed aboard carriers. The carriers were sent into areas for a show of force, and so the airplane was there for that. Pilots that flew it took great pride in the airplanes. I only really have talked to two, and that was over 10 years ago. And these gentlemen are no longer with us. And I haven't found any Demon pilots that are still around willing to talk about the airplane. I just think they've kind of grown old and passed away, which is sad. But these guys took great pride in the airplane, even though it had its problems. They called themselves Demon drivers. Had little special patches made up. The maintenance crew got right on board with that, called themselves Demon doctors. And this airplane needed a lot of doctor work. The airplane was just like the Skyray was completely phased out of service by 1964. We had some better stuff coming up the trail here. Love this picture. This is McDonnell's products. There's one missing. The FH Phantom would have been just a little bit old, would have been the oldest plane in this. It would have been a quartet of airplanes. The airplane at the top is the F2H Banshee, which saw service on Intrepid. Really not a lot of family resemblance when you move down into the F3H Demon. Completely different configuration. It's a single jet engine. Instead of having them at the wing roots, it's a single jet engine in the middle of the fuselage. Intakes moved under the cockpit. Swept wings, of course. Swept tail with a full flying stabilator. And you can see that the tail is kind of above the jet exhaust. That's called the beaver tail. But a little more family resemblance when we get to the next airplane, which was way more successful, and that was the Phantom II. Some people don't even know that it was called the Phantom II. They call it just the Phantom, and that is the F4. Now, before the 1962 change in nomenclature with the Navy, this was called the F4H, no dashes. So you got the F2H, the F3H, and the F4H. Now, there is some family resemblance. May not be super apparent. They went to a twin engine configuration with the Phantom. The Navy vowed that a single engine was never going to work ever again. They wanted the reliability, the safety, I should say, of having that second engine on board when you're out over the water. A lot of people don't see the family resemblance, but maybe a photograph like this will help you visualize. This is the F4H, which would eventually become the F-4 Phantom II. In its prototype form with a single seat, a wing very similar. It doesn't have the, I'm going to switch back to some of the configuration on the F4 Phantom. The intakes are much bigger for these bigger engines. There's a little bit of dihedral out at the wingtips, and the wingtips are canted up a little bit to add some stability. That big fat wing, even though it's a taper or a swept wing, it is a very large in wing area. It can carry a lot of weight, had a lot of lift going for it. It kind of blanked off the tail surfaces, though, and you can see that the tail surfaces were canted downwards to get them into the airstream when the airplane was in high angles of attack or in heavily banked turns. But its original configuration, everything was straight tail, straight wings, and you can see that family resemblance, I think, a little more with the Demon. But it was definitely a step up. The twin engines, the bigger intakes, can carry much more, and it was actually an airplane that was capable of going 1,500 miles an hour. So just a wonderful airplane. And this is the airplane that really led to the demise of things like the Demon and the Skyray and some other jets, the Cougar in particular, were all being phased out of service when the Phantom came on board. We do have one of these on display at Intrepid, and these are kind of rare to find. There's not a lot of these. There's one down in Pensacola for sure. I think there's one out at Pima Air Museum. Not a lot survived. This is a picture of ours a few years ago when we still had the tent, before we had the aircraft restoration hangar. And this is one of the last airplanes we finished inside the tent. And this is just some of the progress shots. I had a whole disc of these. The disc seemed to get corrupted, so I got to get back into some other files, and I do have saved photos of the airplane being restored. Had a lot of corrosion issues on it. One of the other things was the nose cone you see masked off here. That nose cone originally on our Demon had completely deteriorated. It's a fiberglass honeycomb construction, so a radar can see through it. But it completely deteriorated and decayed to the point where it's just nothing but a marshmallow. And Peter Taraka, who leads our aircraft restoration these days, he was a new hire. 7 years ago when the first thing I tasked him with was rebuilding that nose cone. He rebuilt that nose cone essentially from scratch using wood forms, and he made himself a fiberglass mold and then molded a brand new canopy or brand new radome. Quite a remarkable achievement for this airplane. Oh, and there it is on rollout day when it came out of the tent. It was just the star of the show. We kept it right there in front of the island for a while with its fresh new paint job. I get a lot of questions about the painting the canopies. That's something we have done. Started doing it almost 10 years ago. We've started to notice that we would refurbish the interiors, but sitting outside in the ultraviolet light, in the weather, so to speak, but the ultraviolet light mainly was just destroying the interiors of this thing, of all the airplanes. So as we cycle airplanes through for repaints, we are putting this removable coating on. We tried some different things. Sun shields just don't look right. The sun shields also, when you put them on the inside of the canopy, it doesn't stop the ultraviolet light from destroying the plastic. It gets all crazed, smoky looking, little cracks inside. It's something you can't buff out. It's right in the meat of the plexiglass, so to speak. It's not a surface deterioration. It's a deterioration through the entire plexiglass structure. So this not only protects the inside, it also protects the plexiglass. And something makes it look like a big model airplane. Kind of apologize for that. We have a lot of the interiors have been restored, not all of them. The interior on the Demon, we were unable to find a lot of the instruments that the Navy had taken out. Could not find the proper instruments, so no loss there. And in fact, part of the Navy loan agreement, this is on loan from the U.S. Navy in Pensacola, is that we don't open the cockpits and let people in and out anyway. So they also say we can't run engines, which is absolutely no problem with us because these engines are complex, use a lot of fuel, a lot of different kind of power to get them running, and we just don't have that capability. So, and there's the Demon when it took its spot. This was a beautiful shot that Peter took. The sun was going down. A storm had just moved through, dumped a bunch of water on us, and moved back to the east. But to the west, the sun was shining brightly, and you can just see that that beautiful Demon there. So, with that said, is there? I got in the back room there. Any questions popped up? If you have any questions at all, there's okay. There's no questions today. I know as we've been going through the summer, we get a lot less people watching it live and picking it up later on in our YouTube feed. So, and that's fine. You can ask questions there too, because we do periodically go back in there and check and see if anybody's asked a question that we can address. So that is the Demon. I want to thank you for watching. If you have questions, like I said, share them with me. The museum has introduced a lot of new live streams, mostly with the education department. We have a couple with aircraft, mainly me with Aircraft of the Month. We'll talk about an airplane. Hopefully you'll get some questions from you if you want to know more about it. Or if you have comments, if there's any airplanes you'd like to talk about that I haven't covered, just let me know. I've got a lot going on coming up September 14th. I like to plug this one. We're doing some programming with Atlas Obscura, which is really amazing, the places they go and the things they see. And a couple of months ago, we went inside the Space Shuttle Enterprise, which got a lot of feedback. And we had a lot of people watching from all over the world. And the requests have come in for us to do it again. And we decided we are. So we're going to be welcoming Atlas Obscura once again to come inside the space shuttle. We're going to do a little different this time, and you may be excited to know that we're going to have an astronaut with us virtually, Mario Runco, who's a veteran of 3 space flights and has some amazing stories. I actually mentioned him in the first time I did the interior of the space shuttle. So you don't get to see the interior space shuttles very often. We're the only one where we have access to it without all the insulation blankets, so you can actually see the structure and see what's going on in there. So that is September 14th at 6 p.m. New York City time. But go to our website or go to Atlas Obscura's website and find out more about that. Also on September 20th, for you veterans out there, any local veterans in the New York City area, on September 28th, we're going to be doing an on-site program with social distancing, and everybody will be required to wear a mask, and we'll be checking our vaccinations also because of the new rules. You have to be vaccinated to come on board. And but we're going to do a veterans program and show you guys up close and personal with the Skyray, because the Skyray will be moving in right about then, moving into our ARH for restoration. So that's a great program for veterans only, and that will be I think we're going to start that one at 5 p.m. 4 p.m. and go all the way to 8, because the veterans that sign up for this, we get to feed you dinner after you hear us talk about airplanes. So lots of things coming up, lots of education programs. Thank you for watching. The museum has introduced a lot of these new live streams, mainly in the education department. So get on our website, check them out, and find out what the schedule is. And I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.